Hi there, I'm Matthew Herzberg. This is the Myopia Mindset. If you've ever wondered what it would be like to run an in-office myopia event, like an open house or a gathering for your parents to have games and puzzles and, to present to your parents about what you're doing, then you need to watch this episode. If you're already doing that and you want to hear how somebody else is doing it, you need to watch this episode. I've got Dr. Grant Miller on with me. He's come back to the episode to talk about this topic specifically because he does in-office myopia events so well. I use his in-office events as examples whenever I did consulting. I would talk about it because he's been doing it for 4 or 5 years now. He's really just been improving on it year after year after year. If you're a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset, you're going to get the extended version of this episode. So more information from Grant, more of that discussion. I can't wait for you to watch this episode. So let's get to it. All right, here we go. It's time for your weekly shot in the arm when it comes to inspiration, education, and motivation for your path towards success in myopia management. And my guest today is Dr. Grant Miller. As I mentioned in our previous episode, our interview with Grant, he is a rising star in our industry. He is a professional affairs consultant with Johnson & Johnson. He's a practice partner with Treehouse Eyes Myopia Care for Kids. He was their Rookie of the Year for 2024, and he has appeared on WGN's national broadcast to talk about myopia management. Grant, welcome back to the podcast.
Good afternoon, Matt.
And you know what? I was just editing at the time we're recording this. I was just finished editing and then posting the first episode that we did. And we had talked briefly about the in-office events that you all do at your practice. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have you back on and just do like a deep dive into that? Because you do these events better than really anybody else I've seen. And so I would love to kind of just like go in step by step and dissect what you're doing and show everybody like how you started with it and where it's ended up. Cause you've been working on this for like almost 5 years, right?
Yeah, going into the 5th year, and this year's going to be the big one.
All right. Yeah, perfect. Let's get ready for the big one. Before we start out, let's do some housekeeping first and foremost. So we're going to start. Why don't you let everybody know where they can contact you on the internet if they have any questions about anything you talk about in this episode? Let's make sure we get that stated up front.
Yeah, easiest place is usually LinkedIn, since I'm usually talking all the time about everything myopia on there. And then I'm not sure if you drop in email or anything at the end, but grantmillerod@gmail.com. Feel free to ask any question whatsoever.
Perfect. Yeah. And I've been finding it's more useful to put these at the very beginning so people have a chance to write them down or type them in or whatever. When they're at the end, I think a lot of people are just like absorbing everything that they've heard. And then, sometimes not everything makes it into the episode. So why not get it all out on Front Street? And also, this is the part where Matthew Martin is smiling at me. Make sure to like and subscribe for this YouTube channel. If you enjoy what you hear today, leave us a 5-star review. Let us know in the comments. Give us a like. Help us out. Help us spread the message. And then let's get to the episode. Okay, Grant. This started about 4 years ago. Can you walk us through what the original inspiration for doing it was? Let's start at that part.
Yeah, got the office in 2019, COVID hits, and then you're just kind of retooling and saying, what else can we do outside of the exam room? And so we always think about open house events. And so the thought was, let's just have a single day event in back to school season and just kind of vomit myopia all over the office.
Awesome. Yeah. Back to school is such a great time. At Herzberg Optical, the practice I grew up in, it was the best time for myopia management was back to school. So, okay. So how do you prep for this event? How do you seed for it?
We started off by just creating flyers and staff where every patient that walks in say, hey, we're having this event. This is new treatments we're offering at the office, and just kind of learn more of what we're trying to build here at the office.
Mm-hmm. And you said every patient. So we're talking
Everyone.
about even ones that we wouldn't have normally considered for myopia management.
Yeah, so 50-year-old glaucoma follow-up, give them the flyer. You know what? They may have a family. They may come in and go, oh, hey, that's kind of neat. And then they might hear, oh, glaucoma is a risk. So then it's
Mm-hmm.
personal to them. And then they can start spreading and kind of building this word of mouth army to say, hey, go check out what Grand Eye Care is doing.
Gotcha. I gotcha. All right. So then if we're seating with every patient, when do we start the process? Like a month or two out? Like when do you start letting your patients know that this open house is happening?
Yeah, I think when we started, it's the typical every 4 to 6 weeks, or the 4 to 6 weeks before. I think that's pretty general when it comes to any event. So that's when we started it then, which has now evolved to parents and patients go, hey, when are you having that next event? So now it's kind of we built into it. Now we've got this kind of year-round awareness that we're going to have, a couple fun events throughout the year.
Yeah. So when you started, how many people did you initially gather and what did it look like?
Yeah, first time was we picked just an evening after work, 5 to 7, and we had a 900 square foot office, and I think probably had like 60 people in and out of the office in those 2 hours, which was
Wow.
chaotic beyond belief.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does the event look like? You're speaking in front of the parents, I'm assuming?
No, in that sense, we had our biometer sitting up at the front of the office, and everyone's like, "What is that piece of equipment?" And so we use that as like that conversation starter to say, "Hey, sit down, let's measure your eye length." And then
Mm-hmm.
I think I had a poster board up on the wall, and what we did is we did like an axial length, like 22 millimeters to 30 plus. And
Mm-hmm.
what it was is, everyone thinks, "Oh, I want to get the biggest," and when they do, it's like, now we're going to talk about this problem that we're trying to, bring an awareness to for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when that conversation gets started, like, are you basically repeating this over and over again over the course of 2 hours? What's the structure look like?
Yeah, it's the first one was pretty unstructured. It was, hey, we're gonna
Yeah.
hang out, have some food, have some snacks. The office was just three of us and still is. So, it's hard to sit there and continue talking. So, hey, come to this table. There's a game you can play. It's a myopia simulator. Come over here, do this axial length measurement. And I think my most favorite one was Justin Kwan and I came up with it. It was a MySight scavenger hunt. And so
Okay.
I think he had an article a couple years ago. The important step is just getting a contact lens on the eye. Show that kid, show that parent the possibility. And so it was, hey, put on MySight. We're not going to charge for fees. Pop it on. Go look for some stuff. And that kind of familiarized people to that idea. And I think that was kind of the coolest one of breaking down that wall of, I didn't know my 8-year-old could wear contacts.
Interesting. Okay. So what you're saying is that you would have the kids put in a MySight lens
Mhm.
into their eye and then
Yep.
say, okay, now that you got the lens in, go find different objects or rewards in the practice. Okay.
Yeah, and
So,
then you have them post a social post of, I'm not wearing glasses, Grand Eye Care. And, in the beginning, maybe a few people saw that and heard about it. But again, when they came back in for their follow-ups or their next yearly visit, then that conversation started, hey, can my child actually wear those lenses? And we've already done all the legwork up to that point just from that
mhm.
singular event.
That's awesome. So like you put all these kids in MySight lenses for basically a day
Yeah.
and gave them the experience of what it would like to be free of glasses and then had an opportunity to talk about it and then utilized their vision without glasses in an actual environment so that the kid could like figure out how awesome it was to be free of the glasses. That's really
Yeah.
smart. I love that.
And then when I take those photos, they're not hidden behind that pair of glasses. Again, I wore them all my life. We don't like to think that it's part of our identity, but it is. And then when we can, take them away from that whole, thing they're hiding behind, that kind of opens up some new doors for them to become themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. You're reminding me of like when I was a kid. I think this was in junior high, if I'm not mistaken. And there was this kid in school that had glasses, but they were only for cosmetic because he thought he just looked better with them. And at first there was no lenses in them, and I was like, this is so weird because I work at an optometry practice where we specifically try to get kids out of their glasses. And this guy is wearing glasses that have no lenses in them because he thinks he looks smarter in them. It's just an odd like juxtaposition. So when you talk about your own personal experience and how that translates, like what is that that is a part of your motivation for selling myopia management. Remind us what was your prescription like and what kind of challenges were you facing as a child?
Yeah, so what I was a minus 1250. My
Mm-hmm.
axial length, we just did it a couple of weeks ago, is 28.6 millimeters.
Mm-hmm.
And circling back to LinkedIn, I actually just shared a post where I just did a lecture and I actually talk about my case where I'm having retinal findings as of 2 months ago. So, myopic maculopathy is pretty much going to happen to me. So I'm 35. And so there's
Mm.
that personal experience with it. But I think that's tough for parents to understand because they're not living it like this. So I think there's a fine line when it comes from me trying to, just vomit all this education and awareness to pull it back in line.
Yeah. So what do you use then to try to translate that to the parent who may not be understanding it?
Yeah, and we hit it from all different angles. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
send out text messages before parents come into visits. We're following up with these kids. So if they're pre-myopic or myopic, it's our patient base is we have to see that it's getting worse before we reenact. So, our first time conversion rate sucks, but by the third or fourth visit of just measuring axial length and progression, they kind of get it there. So that's been our success as of late. Obviously, the space is continually evolving nonstop. So hopefully we
Mm-hmm.
find something to convert those first time visits into more, programs because that would benefit us a lot and the kid.
Right. So you are working on patients over multiple visits, like I keep saying, my origin story, we would work on patients at the office I grew up in 5 years on average, before we saw a turnaround. So I'm very familiar with the giving them the information, making sure they understand, and then planning on doing it the next time you see them.
Yeah, and it's that constant reminder of, hey, this problem's here. It's getting worse. We can do something about it. And maybe they progress to a -4 by then, but we're doing something, and that's all that
Yeah,
matters at the end.
that's a great point. Yeah, it can be so infuriating and give you this sense of powerlessness when you are trying to communicate how important this is. And I think a lot of docs then try to double down on the scare factor of myopia. And I think that that's a bad move in general. Like just saying like, you are not getting that first conversion rate. So what are some tricks or tactics that you're using for those repeat visits? Is it just simply repeating the information, or does your strategy change and evolve with each visit?
Some of that is dependent on the parent, because when we've switched to kind of have just a mini consult when we first meet them.
Mm-hmm.
We brought Johnny in. He's having trouble seeing the board. I'm concerned because his eyes are growing too long, too quickly, and getting weaker. Does this concern you? And so in that 10 seconds, I flip that toward the parent to gauge their interest. One, do they care at all? Two, are they kind of like, what's this guy saying? This is interesting. Three, they're sold. And then I can use that to know this parent's going to take me repeating the word myopia and progression and control over and over versus, hey, this one probably just needs a consult or a virtual consult.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's taken off some of that repeatedly taking head and hitting wall nonstop
Right.
over and over. And so I've used that to kind of build into knowing when and where I can put effort and also where I can hold back to save myself the sanity.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good call for sure. You have to know where and when to spend your resources, and that includes your mental resources and how much energy you can
Exactly.
personally invest in the situation. I don't know if I asked you this last time, but I want to ask you it now. Do you charge for your consult? I know some doctors do. I know some doctors don't. I always find this to be fascinating, the reasons why or why not some do or do not. So, what about you?
Yeah. We don't. We never have. We live in a very weird mixed, European. We got a lot of immigrants that just moved in. We've got people of different ethnic back or income backgrounds, and so for us to say, "Here, pay us this money," is going to deter some of those people. And
Hmm.
I'm putting all that weight on me as this to sell this in the office. So to us, that's part of our marketing, and we're going with a volume. Now we're still a young practice. If I've been doing this for 20 years, different story. But
Yeah.
we're trying to achieve exponential growth in a field that is very difficult to do.
Yeah, that is one common feature I've seen amongst the docs who are not charging is a lot of them started with a period of time where they weren't charging and then are moving into phases where they are because they've built up that like reputation and credibility and referral network, so that then it becomes like, all right, now I have to isolate on like who has investment in this situation, who has skin in the game, who's coming to see me for the reasons I want. My time is very limited for myopia management. Not to say that you have a plethora of time, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I liked about one of the aspects of Treehouse Eyes is they have a virtual consultant. So people can find us on our website. Even like commercial docs can just refer the parent to that. And then that consultant will weed out who's worth your in-office chair time. And so
Mm,
that was one thing that I really have enjoyed because now we're not working as hard. And end of the day, we're getting worn out for these constant no's. So this is just one less no in my chair.
right, right. Good call. Yeah. All right. So you started the event about 4 years ago or so. It was a madhouse. You had a cool scavenger hunt. You had some testing. You had a lot of education and awareness. You had a lot of foot traffic in 2 hours. What were the first things you definitely needed to change, like right away? Like as soon as y'all were done, you were like, okay, we need to change the following things. What were the things that you started changing?
First off was just scheduling the next one because we had so much good feedback. So it was, do we do this twice a year? Do we just focus this during back to school? And so
Hmm.
that time we then spanned it out to just like 2 days where we're like Wednesday, Thursday, the whole day will just kind of be the myopia events, not just a set 2 hours in the time. So
Right.
and that started this idea of, hey, anyone coming in the office to pick up glasses, to come in for a follow-up visit, like that's an opportunity to spread more awareness. And so expanding that kind of is what snowballed it into, coming up this year, we're going to do a whole month in August of myopia management events.
Oh, wow. I'm imagining your patients like who are coming in to pick up glasses or whatever the case may be, walking into this open house environment. What does that look like? Like, now that you have it perfected, like, do you guys put up decorations? Like, what does the open house look like at its full strength now?
Yeah, well, now that we have a bigger office, it's a lot more overwhelming with the info, but there or the stuff in the office. But there's giant inflatable eyeballs. We started off with a poster board for the axial length, and now it's like a 6 by 8 foot sized axial length chart on the wall.
Hmm.
I'd like to get a projector because then I don't have to hand draw it. But yeah, you walk into check-in, the check-in desk has all the raffle boxes, and then everywhere else is myopia stuff. Like we're not having Ray-Ban and Gucci stuff all over the place. There's a table for MySight, there's a table for ability, there's all kinds of stuff. So you can't miss it if you have two eyes.
Hmm. And how are you? Like you said that the new one is going to be like the entire month, right? How are you going to make an entire month fit into this program? Like, what are you going to change? How does that look?
This with this being the first time, we're going to keep the activities and kind of stuff the same. Obviously, we've
Hmm.
trained our staff a lot better, so now I don't have to be so involved. She can kind of take over from there. But yeah, anyone that walks in and they ask the question of what is that? She's now in the point where she can answer that question as if she was me back in the exam room. And
Perfect.
you've seen her, you've questioned her. I want you to come back in and question her again because she might still
Sure.
be terrified of you, but she's been able to rein this in and actually convert a lot of patients just by herself. And I
Yeah.
think that's a huge benefit because that's less work I have to do.
Yeah. Can we clarify the terror around my visits? Like, just so people don't think I'm a monster. Like, so, when I was working with J&J, Grant was one of my accounts, and he had asked me to come in and speak with a staff member about presenting, myopia management, about Ortho-K, about getting a different kind of understanding. What was the motivation behind doing that, Grant?
I think I've always, from all my like understanding of this, is I've always believed in our staff are more important than us as doctors because when that patient calls the schedule, they're spending more time with reception, with our technicians, even with opticians than what we have in that exam window. And I think a lot of people miss that opportunity to say, hey, let's have those individuals become my sidekick. speak
Right.
and think just like I do, because there's conversions that happen out of it. I mean, last week we had a patient outside RX come in, -6, 13-year-old. She talked to them about myopia management. I didn't even know about it. Got a consult on the books to find out, how what we can do for this child. But because we took the time, we check in, we hold her accountable to our standards, it's
Hmm.
helped us kind of find a new avenue to bring in patients without me actually seeing them.
Right. Right. And if you can get a staff member to that point where they are trained and you trust them and you've been through it with them, they've had enough time to grow into it, it is a huge asset to the practice. And I think that moving forward, a lot of industry, and I know the AAOMC is definitely going to be focusing more on staff in the future. And this is something that we kind of always like already knew. Like, I mean, I even took it for granted to a certain extent because I grew up in a practice where like all staff members were essentially on point. Like we didn't expect perfection. And did I do absolutely everything, originally very, very well? No, I had to grow into it. But the idea was everybody in that small of a practice, we had a couple of staff members. We weren't like a 15 staff member practice. I have to make sure to keep prefacing that like not all 15 of your staff members need to be able to talk myopia, but it wouldn't hurt if they could. Um, and so like we needed to be like mini experts on the topic. And my mom was the office manager. It gave us an opportunity to grow organically into it. It was okay if you didn't know certain things. You just had to be motivated to learn them. And then as you got more comfortable with the process, that's when you really started to shine. That's when you had an impact on the practice and then were contributing. And I want to say with your staff member, that is how that progression kind of happened, right? Because when I first
Yeah.
came in, she was really nervous and kind of terrified. And like, I wasn't trying to be like a monster or anything. I was just being like, let's get after it. Like, let's talk about it, present it to me. And like, here's the adjustments that we can make.
No, she's still terrified of me. So I think
Okay.
5 years from now, you could come in and do the same thing, and she's still going to be scared of you and me for the same
Well,
question.
what I want to say is that like the last time I was in your office, I did notice that she was like a lot more on top of it, knew her stuff, had obviously gotten used to like presenting it. And I think like the big part of it is the intimidation factor. Myopia has like so many rabbit holes within rabbit holes within rabbit holes. There's so many different routes you can get. There's so many points of resistance you can get from it. Like you need to understand like what is the low hanging fruit of resistance for a parent. Like are they in a mode to be able to talk about it? What kind of stuff are they going to find out on the internet and then put in front of you, whether it's right or wrong? So how does your staff now that she's like found it, she's in the zone, how like does she best contribute to the practice, like as far as input, like when it comes to these myopia events, does she have like a lot of input on like what you guys can change or improve or add?
Yeah, so what she's only been here through the last event. So
Mm-hmm.
and for her to come out of the dental space into eye care, she kind of got worked a good bit in the realm of myopia management and Ortho-K. So, um, when we get close to planning this, we're just going to say, hey, what do you think works when you talk to parents? What are some ways that you've heard some success? And then we'll try to implement that into how we present things or talk about it. We also had her in ability overnight for the last year and a half. So we've brought some more of her own understanding when it comes to what Ortho-K is, which I think has
Yeah.
helped out.
Yeah, that is a huge benefit to have a staff member wearing Ortho-K specifically, but utilizing any myopia management treatment is a benefit. Like Ortho-K just happens to be, in my opinion, the grandparent of myopia management and the most effective communicator, especially if it's that staff member who's been in glasses previously and the patient comes in and they're like, something's different about you. And it's like, yeah, I'm not
Exactly.
wearing glasses anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think it's an easy way to build trust too. When you're like, okay, I want Johnny to do Ortho-K, then she can talk about her experience, and that kind of breaks down that wall of like, what the heck are we doing sleeping in a contact lens?
hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Like, when you have, especially when it comes to like INR, like a person who wears Ortho-K can communicate differently than someone who doesn't.
100%.
And when it comes to topography capture and the rest of that stuff, having someone who's benefited from wearing the lenses, they it kind of like expands their line of thinking, right? Like all of a sudden, cutting corners on topography makes sense that that's a bad idea. When they see the effects and how the adjustments have gone, like I'm an Ortho-K where I wasn't when I grew up in the practice. I was briefly when I first started working with the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control. And I wish I had started wearing lenses sooner just to see what they were like, because once I was able to put those things in, I was like, oh, I was communicating at a different level. Like if I had had an opportunity to go back with those patients again, I would have done it totally differently. Granted, I had a good system to work with provided by my mom, our office manager, but just having the personal, relatable experience of being like, well, this is what it feels like when it's in my eye, and just close your eye and you'll be fine. And they're surprisingly easy to sleep in. And here's the common things that come up, but you're going to be fine. Um, all of that is so useful. And like you said, builds up that credibility. What are some other credibility like bonuses? Like obviously your experience growing up, your staff member in Ortho-K. What other kind of things have added to your credibility or your ability to sell to the patient, specifically in the exam or the consult or even at these myopia events?
I think the easiest one is the WGN interview that I did. So that's on a TV nonstop in our waiting
Right.
room. And you go to pick up a patient and they do this double check of, wait, that's you? And I'm like, yeah, I've been on TV talking about this stuff. Like this is part of what I do. And so even that's been what we're going up to getting close to 3 years now is just that's built some cred into this where people go, oh damn, he was on WGN. He must be real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Any points of credibility that a doc can get, I think are useful. One of the most overlooked points of credibility is being a member of the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control. You can get a certificate as part of your membership that should be firmly put in your office. And you should, I mean, I don't know if you do this, but I was shocked that more doctors didn't do this who are specifically members of the AAOMC, is saying that they are a part of the organization. Do you do that with Treehouse Eyes? I know you're connected to them. Do you use the Treehouse Eyes, program as part of your overall pitch and the identity of your practice?
Yeah, because I mean, we talk about partnership, but we say that we're a select few of people, one in Illinois, but also we're just like a nationwide group in that sense. So again, I think it's a fine line of talking about that stuff. I'd rather talk about the articles that I've written, posted on the wall behind me or stuff. And so
Right.
we've got those spread throughout the office. But I think it's another opportunity to say, hey, I'm in the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control, and then I'm in Treehouse Eyes. So it kind of expands this kind of resume almost of I love what I do, but also I know what I'm doing.
Right. And you have a personal investment in knowing as much as you can and being on essentially on the bleeding edge of it. Like if you have a doctor who claims they do myopia management on their website, and that's fine, but if you have a doctor who also talks how they're part of these organizations or connected with these institutions, that really does add an extra level of like, oh no, I'm really into this. Like this goes
Yeah, and
beyond, you know.
like 3 years ago, I think we had a kid come to us because they wanted a second opinion on like a myopia consult. And
Hmm.
mom's like, I saw you were a member of the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control. And I'm like, I didn't have to say that.
All right, well, that's it for this regular version of the episode, but the discussion doesn't stop here. It actually continues in an extended version of this episode, which is available to our Substack supporters. You can, if you're interested in getting the rest of the episode, consider becoming a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset. In addition to an extended version of this episode and every other episode that we do, you'll also get access to exclusive monthly bonus episodes of the Myopia Mindset. And I know you're interested. You've made it this far. And for the cost is $12 a month, which is basically the cost of a cup of coffee each and every week. And that's how I like to put it. Listen, if you would buy me a cup of coffee each and every week to nerd out about myopia, to bring on amazing guests, to spread the word about how awesome myopia management is and how more ECPs should be engaged in this specialty, then please consider becoming a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset. You can do so on our Substack. Myopiamindset.substack.com is how you do that. Thank you so much for your consideration. I'll see you at the next one.